Premier, is it good enough for your top advisor, Chris Eccles, to not know who made the decision for private security to be engaged, and also for him not to pass on the email to you from Phil Gaetjens offering the ADF?
Well, as I've consistently said, Simon, there's a process going on at the moment, and it's important that that process runs to its logical conclusion, and that will be findings, guidance, all sorts of material that will come out of that. They'll make recommendations, I would think, about what next steps should be, and I'll leave it to the inquiry, which I'm assisting later this week, to do that important work.
Will you answer those questions tomorrow if asked?
Well, what I'm asked is a matter for counsel assisting. I can confirm to you that I'll be truthful, absolutely honest and direct.
Obviously, you're not answering the question.
Well, I'm not running
in this forum. You?
Well, this is not the forum to do it, Simon. With the greatest of respect, I understand why you asked the question, but there's a process going on, and I'll be part of that process. And it is not appropriate for me to be essentially duplicating that process from this podium.
There has been a lot of criticism that a lot of top bureaucrats seem to have I don't recall response. Do you think that it is okay for people like Chris Eccles to not really say that they remember what happened in decisions? For example, hiring thousands of people worth millions of dollars and how that happened. Do you have confidence in the fact that no one is being held accountable for these decisions?
Well, again, the inquiry has not concluded its work, and the answers that we need, the answers that we don't have, is exactly why the inquiry was set up. Not for the avoidance of those answers, but to get them. And of course, the fullest and most detailed way in which we'll get those answers is when the inquiry has concluded its work.
Do you expect that at the conclusion of the inquiry, Victorians will actually know who was responsible for those crucial decisions? Because so far in the inquiry, we've just heard a lot of people saying it wasn't me.
Well, my only expectation, Rachel, is that the inquiry will do its work without fear or favour. And as to what's in their report, what findings they make, that's entirely a matter for them. And the final report is still some way off. But I'm very confident that they are thoroughly examining all the issues that they believe are relevant and which were set out in the terms of reference.
Are you going to, sorry, I understand that there might be delays in the witness list. Are you definitely appearing before the inquiry tomorrow?
That's entirely a matter for the inquiry. It's not for me to make announcements about their schedule.
Have you been notified of a different date?
Yes, but it's not for me to make announcements. I will be appearing as the board pleases, and that's a matter for the board. As I said, Alex, it's not for me. I'm not a spokesman for Her Honour, Judge Coate, and the Board of Inquiry. That's a matter for them.
Do you know if the inquiry is extending its time to allow more time for you and your ministers to be quizzed?
I'm not quite sure what the question is.
The
overall timeline.
Has Jennifer Coate asked you for another extension of time?
No.
Okay.
Premier, if the inquiry doesn't determine who decided to hire private security, has it done its job?
Well, again, you're asking me to predict or to forecast. That's an entirely hypothetical matter.
I'm not asking you to predict or forecast.
Well, you are. You're putting to me something that hasn't happened, and you're asking me to comment on what might be my response if it did happen. That is the definition, any fair-minded definition of what a hypothetical is. And again, I'm not criticising you for asking the question. I'm simply saying to you that it is a hypothetical matter, and all of those matters can be settled one way or the other when the final report is handed up, and then we can have a discussion then.
How important is accountability in your view? Because the public feels that there is none.
Well, having established an inquiry to get answers that are necessary, I think my views on that are very well known.
Yeah, but if the inquiry is not delivering answers...
Well, you're drawing a conclusion there that I don't think is necessarily a fair one, but even leave that debate to one side. The inquiry is not finished, so trying to predict or to hypothesise or opine about what will be there at the end of that process, I don't think is a helpful exercise and not one based in fact. It is speculation and nothing more than that.
There'll be a lot of memory loss though, doesn't there?
Well, you're free to draw whatever conclusions you want to, but please don't expect me to provide... well, we will...
Pretty basic questions.
As I've said to you, Alex, the process is not finished. When the process is finished, we'll be able to speak not about what might happen, but what indeed has happened. And that, I think, is a much more productive discussion. That'll be a conversation based in fact and finding, rather than the obvious speculation that you're inviting me. And again, you're entitled to do that. And I'm also equally entitled to say to you that that's not something I'm going to get into.
Will your memory be as vague tomorrow as your bureaucrats seem to have been?
Well, you can make judgments about the memories of others when I appear before the inquiry, I'll answer questions as honestly, frankly, clearly, directly as possible.
Can I ask
You
Alex?
still stand by your statement that the ADF never made a support to Victoria?
Well, that's not exactly the statement that I've made, but I can confirm for you that the statements I have made, I stand by.
Can you just clarify those again for us on the record?
No, I will not be doing that, as I've made very clear to you.
Not
the
even
inqu-
considering that you're about to discuss this, just to refresh everyone's memory before
Well,
you go ahead.
no, Alex, because in the bit where you just stopped in your question, you've kind of answered your question, given that you're about to. That's the key point. I'm
Yeah,
about to
it's on
speak to the
record. It's on
inquiry.
the record, so let's
Well, it's already on the
refresh
record, and
everyone. Get it.
I have sufficient confidence in your research skills. You'll be able to go and look. Listen, you and I both know what I've said, and you know what my answer to the question is. And I'm not going to speculate on what I might or might not say.
I'm not asking that. I'm just
well,
trying to
I think
really
you
just
might be.
clarify your position once and for
And
all
I-
before we go ahead.
Well, everyone gets a go. You can all try and have a go at once if you like. That's not the way this normally works. I am not going to speculate about what I'll be asked or the answers I'll provide later in the week. That's the first point. On the second point, my public comments are on the record and I stand by them, and I am not going to run through them from A to Z today. I'm not doing that.
In one of those comments, you told the Parliamentary Accounts Committee that it was fundamentally incorrect to assert that ADF was on offer. So, do you now know, given the evidence that has come before the inquiry, that to be an incorrect statement?
No, I'm not making that judgment at all. As I've said to you, I've made
And
comments on these matters.
What allows you to make that judgment?
Well,
that it's
I've
not
made comments
incorrect?
on the matters, and I stand by the comments I've made. And again, I'm not interested in adding to those comments.
And what are
Those
you
comments
basing those
directly
comments on?
contradict some of the evidence we've heard, though. How
Well, in
how does
your
that make
view,
sense?
Rachel, they may do that, but
No.
it's not for. Can I say to you, it's not for any of us here to be pretending to do the work that the inquiry's doing. It's getting on with its job. Let's let it do that, and then at the end of that process, we'll be in a position where we can look at the findings that they make, the recommendations they hand down, and have a much more expansive discussion.